The massive alien vessel cut through the blackness of space, its hull scarred by millennia of interstellar travel. After 500,000 years, the Xi-4 had finally returned to Earth. 500,000 years ago, they had visited this planet, a young world teeming with promise, its primitive primates just beginning to shape their future. The Xi-4 had left, expecting to return to a flourishing civilization, a testament to the intelligence they had once glimpsed. Instead, what they found chilled them to the core. As the ship entered orbit, the crew observed a planet barely clinging to life. Vast swaths of land were barren, scorched black as if some great fire had consumed them. The oceans, once deep in blue, were now sickly and green, thick with toxins. The atmosphere crackled with unstable weather patterns, and the polar caps, which they had documented all those years ago, were now mere remnants of their former selves. The planet was dying. The Xi-4's leader, Commander Zolan, initiated a planetary scan. The readings confirmed their worst fears. The biosphere had been decimated. Species that had once thrived were gone, replaced by an unnatural silence. Even the humans, the dominant species, were missing. The great cities that should have been shimmering with lights and life were nothing but skeletal ruins, swallowed by nature or buried beneath shifting sands. Whatever had happened here was not a slow decline. It was an extinction. Zolan ordered a landing, selecting a site that once held a sprawling metropolis. The city's remains were haunting. Skyscrapers stood half-toppled, their glass exteriors shattered, their steel frameworks rusted and crumbling. Streets were littered with the remnants of human existence, abandoned vehicles, remnants of communication devices, and faded signs warning of disasters long past. The air was thick with the scent of decay and something else, something unnatural. As the team advanced deeper into the ruins, they stumbled upon something strange. A structure, unlike the others, remained perfectly intact. It was a massive facility, its walls smooth and untouched by time. Strange symbols, unlike any human language, were carved into the entrance. With a wave of his appendage, Zolan commanded the doors to be opened. Inside, they discovered something horrific. Thousands of humanoid figures were lined up in rows, perfectly preserved in glass chambers. Their bodies were frail, their eyes sunken, yet their faces were frozen in expressions of pure terror. Some chambers had been shattered from the inside, leaving nothing but skeletal remains on the cold floor. It was not just a tomb. It was a prison. A low hum echoed through the structure, and suddenly, the lights flickered to life. A message played in a garbled voice, barely decipherable, but the meaning was clear. This was humanity's last desperate attempt to escape something. Not a war. Not a natural disaster. Something far worse. The Xi-4 had not just returned to a dead world. They had returned to something waiting in the dark. And it had noticed them. Point 1. Earth is a wasteland, the planet is nearly unrecognizable, with toxic oceans, barren lands, and ruined cities. 2. Humanity is extinct, no signs of life remain, except for preserved bodies in mysterious containment chambers. 3. An unknown threat lingers, a hidden force caused humanity's downfall, and it has now noticed the Xi-4. The alien vessel hovered over Earth, scanning the surface with precision. The planet they had once visited 500,000 years ago was now a shadow of what it had been. Vast landscapes stretched below them, but instead of thriving forests and sprawling cities, they saw devastation. The lush greenery that had once covered the continents was reduced to dry, cracked wastelands. Some areas appeared scorched, as if immense fires had swept across them, leaving behind only charred remnants of life. Others had been swallowed by encroaching deserts, dunes shifting where rivers and lakes had once flourished. The air shimmered with rising heat, the land seemingly suffocating under an atmosphere that had turned hostile. The oceans, once deep and vibrant, now looked thick and lifeless. Their waters were a murky green, poisoned by centuries of contamination. Great patches of algae choked the surface, spreading like a disease, and beneath them, the remains of sunken structures jutted out like tombstones of forgotten civilizations. The shores bore the scars of rising tides and storms that had carved jagged lines into the coastlines. Cities that had once stood proudly along the water's edge had crumbled, their remains slowly being reclaimed by the encroaching sea. The planet's atmosphere, once rich with oxygen and balanced for life, now crackled with instability. The skies above were filled with thick, swirling clouds that cast eerie shadows over the land. Lightning forked through the heavens with unnatural frequency, illuminating the twisted remains of what had once been great metropolises. Windstorms howled through the skeletal remains of buildings, whipping up dust and debris as if the very air itself were rebelling against the ruin below. Scanning further, the vessel detected radiation zones scattered across the continents. Some glowed faintly, remnants of past cataclysms, while others pulsed with unnatural energy. What had once been centers of human civilization were now silent graveyards, poisoned by forces unknown. The land bore deep scars, massive craters that suggested explosions of immense power. In some regions, strange formations of metal and concrete stood fused together, melted into grotesque shapes as if subjected to unimaginable heat. The great cities, once bustling with billions of human lives, had become hollowed-out ruins. Buildings stood as crumbling monuments, their glass shattered, their steel frameworks rusting away. Roads, once filled with the constant motion of vehicles, lay cracked and buried beneath layers of dust and debris. Bridges hung in ruins, their skeletal remains jutting out over dry riverbeds. Structures that had once reached toward the sky now leaned at unnatural angles, ready to collapse with the next tremor of the unstable earth beneath them. Nature had begun reclaiming some areas, but not in a way that suggested renewal. Vines twisted through broken windows, but they were dry and brittle. Strange, mutated plants sprouted from the cracks in pavement, their colors unnatural, their forms distorted. There was no sign of birds, no hum of insects, no rustle of small creatures moving through the ruins. The silence was complete. The alien team descended onto the surface, moving cautiously through the ruined remains of what was once a thriving civilization. Their scanners confirmed what they had feared: there were no signs of intelligent life. The streets, once bustling with billions of human beings, were empty, filled only with remnants of a long-forgotten past. Vehicles sat abandoned, their frames rusted and interiors filled with dust. Some had been overturned or crushed, as if chaos had erupted in the final days. The remnants of homes and businesses stood eerily silent, their walls covered in layers of grime and decay. Signs of daily human life, clothing, books, scattered belongings, were strewn across the ground, untouched for what seemed like an eternity. The most haunting discovery came when they found the bodies. Some were preserved in unnatural positions, as if frozen in time. Skeletal remains lay curled up in corners, huddled together in groups, as if seeking protection from something unseen. Others were sprawled across the streets, their bones covered in layers of dust, their final moments lost to history. Some structures held rooms filled with neatly arranged rows of corpses, all facing the same direction, as if awaiting something that never came. In underground shelters, thousands of bodies remained in preserved conditions, their faces locked in expressions of fear and pain. It was as if humanity had fought to the very end, but against an enemy they could never overcome. Further exploration revealed disturbing evidence of failed survival attempts. Bunkers filled with stockpiled supplies had been sealed from the inside, yet all that remained within were brittle bones and dried-out food reserves. Entire cities had been abandoned in an orderly fashion, as if humanity had tried to flee in a coordinated effort. But to where? No escape routes led anywhere promising. Some areas contained vast piles of ash, scattered with the remains of what had once been homes and people. There were no signs of battle, no weapons left behind, no evidence of a war between nations. This was not a civilization destroyed by conflict. It was something else entirely. In some locations, machines had continued running long after their creators had disappeared. Automated systems in underground laboratories blinked with failing lights, screens flashing unreadable messages. Records, though damaged, hinted at desperate scientific attempts to halt something inevitable. Genetic modifications, experiments in cryogenic freezing, rushed medical trials, none of it had saved them. Some documents suggested that humans had attempted to integrate themselves into artificial intelligence, hoping to preserve their consciousness in digital form. But no voices echoed through the lifeless servers, no traces of intelligence remained. Whatever they had tried, it had failed. The most perplexing evidence came from structures that seemed untouched by time. Hidden beneath the surface, massive chambers contained rows upon rows of glass tubes, each holding what appeared to be a human body. Some chambers remained sealed, their occupants frozen in eerie stillness, while others had been shattered from within. The preserved bodies showed no signs of aging, as if something had attempted to keep them in perfect condition, The alien explorers stood before the massive underground structure, its metallic walls untouched by time. Unlike the ruined cities above, this facility had remained sealed, its entrance reinforced with materials far beyond the capabilities of early human civilization. Strange symbols covered the doors, not in any known human language, but carved with such precision that they seemed to hold a purpose beyond simple writing. The moment the team activated their scanners, a low hum vibrated through the ground. It was as if something deep within the structure had sensed their presence. As the entrance slid open, stale air rushed outward, carrying with it the scent of decay and something unnatural. The interior was pristine, sterile, untouched by dust or erosion. Bright, artificial lighting flickered to life, illuminating long corridors lined with glass chambers. Each chamber contained a human figure, suspended in an eerie stillness. Some appeared to be in a state of deep sleep, their faces calm, while others had their mouths open in silent screams, frozen in a moment of terror. Their bodies showed no signs of decay, preserved perfectly as if they had just been placed there moments ago. Rows upon rows of these chambers stretched into the distance. Some were cracked open, their glass shattered from the inside. Scattered across the floor were remains, skeletal fragments, dried-out tissue, and strange blackened stains that resisted analysis. The facility's walls were lined with monitors still flickering with unreadable data, their screens displaying human silhouettes with cryptic symbols flashing beside them. Some screens showed what looked like brainwave activity, but the signals were erratic, fluctuating wildly before suddenly flatlining. The records, though damaged, indicated that this place had once been an attempt to preserve humanity. But something had gone horribly wrong. Further inside, the corridors led to a massive control room where a single chair sat in front of a large screen. A desiccated human corpse, still clad in a tattered lab coat, was slumped over the controls, its skeletal fingers gripping a rusted keycard. The screen in front of it flickered, showing a looped recording in a distorted, garbled human voice. The words were difficult to decipher, but a few phrases stood out: containment breach, not what we thought, it learned, and finally, we were wrong. The last phrase repeated over and over, as if whoever had left the message had wanted to make sure it was understood. Deeper into the facility, the chambers changed. The humans inside these had strange modifications, elongated limbs, enlarged skulls, and unnatural protrusions beneath their skin. Some had additional sets of eyes, others had what appeared to be mechanical implants fused directly into their nervous systems. These were not simple preservation experiments. This was something else. It was as if humanity had been trying to adapt, to change itself in response to something they had encountered. Some of the monitors showed old footage, scientists in panic, security alarms blaring, people being dragged away into the shadows by unseen forces. The final recording cut out just as a figure, humanoid but distorted beyond recognition, turned toward the camera. At the heart of the facility was a massive containment chamber, its reinforced doors sealed with multiple layers of security. Warning signs covered the walls, written in various human languages, all conveying the same message: do not open. The energy readings from within were unlike anything the explorers had encountered before. Their sensors struggled to process the data, fluctuating wildly between extreme heat and unnatural cold. Something inside was still active, still alive in some form. The containment glass was fogged, obscuring whatever lay within, but faint movements flickered behind the surface. The readings suggested that whatever was inside had been dormant for a long time, but now, something had changed. As they continued scanning, a deep vibration resonated through the chamber. The lights flickered, and a sound, low and guttural, echoed from within. The facility's automated systems, long silent, suddenly came to life. Screens flashed warnings in unreadable text, alarms blared, and a mechanical voice began counting down in an unknown language. Whatever humanity had locked away, whatever they had tried to escape, had been waiting. And now, it was aware of their presence.